Welcome back. I believe that we are now live.
Excellent.
Here we are. It is our Roundtable live on this beautiful Thursday morning. We've got some snow falling, and we are excited to be here. We had to reschedule from last week, but this is a great topic. So it was one that was worth rescheduling and taking some time to focus on and to have a great discussion around. As a reminder, these Roundtable Lives, it's our new format for our alumni, our Unacademy alumni, and it's in an effort to help you, give you the ability to log on, to watch. They will be recorded and posted onto our YouTube channel, so you can watch them at a later date and a later time. But during this Roundtable Live, we want you to watch. You don't have to have your cameras on, but please chat in our discussion. Get your questions in there, and we'll take moments to answer those. And it just helps with our discussion as well, because this is all about you. It's all about our alumni, right?
Absolutely.
We're creating this and crafting this to help you, to be a resource for you, but also it's because it's things that we're hearing from the people going through our programs right now, and that's kind of how our topics are created.
Right. And we're in the middle of a reinvention, so these are hot topics right now.
A business reinvention. One of our programs,
Yes. We're always reinventing
I was just going to say, when are we not?
Yeah.
So here we are, today's topic, the pain and the payoff of your pricing strategy. Pricing is tough. It is something that we could spend months and years and a lot of time breaking down and discussing with our small businesses and everybody that we work with. It's a pain point. It's hard to know what your pricing strategies are, if you're pricing accurately or correctly, where are you going to put your price, and it's always something that it creates a lot of discussion, and that's because there's a lot to it.
Right.
So today in our conversation, we're hoping to kind of just have a conversation around it.
Yeah.
Break it down a little bit.
Yeah, and look at it from different angles. I think we tend to think of pricing as a math problem that we solve, and then that's it. And I think what we try to do is kind of do a 360 around pricing and really try to look at what are all the variables, what are the opportunities with pricing, how does pricing become a marketing tool. So, and there's a lot to that.
Well, this is going to be exciting. Yeah. Let's jump in. So we have a few videos today that we're going to be sharing with you guys too. I wanted to put out there this morning on my way in, I was listening to a TED Talk about pricing, and it got me motivated because it got me thinking about everything that we get to discuss today. But she, on this TED Talk, and I'll post it in our alumni Facebook page so everybody can see it. It's just a really quick 10-minute talk. But the focus of her talk is your customers, you're never going to get paid what you're worth, but you should be able to be paid, at your value or what you're valued, and your pricing should reflect your value. But your customers aren't going to be able to pay you what your value is if they never know what your value is.
Right.
And so it was a discussion around clearly defining and communicating your value proposition.
Right.
Which is actually a really difficult thing to do. And we had our business reinvention program, and that was one of our homework pieces. And for all of our businesses, that was a real struggle.
It was.
So this is going to be a part of our conversation today. And but before we get there, I think we're going to talk a little bit about structure.
Yeah.
And strategy.
Yeah. So one of the just fundamental issues around pricing is the structure of pricing. And we hit on it in business reinvention because I think it's important for business owners to understand that there's tried and true formulas for how prices are set across the board in all industries. There's a dozen of them for sure, more than that probably. So recognize that there isn't certainly just one way to do this, and we're going to talk about two specifically today. But I think it frees you from thinking this is a box you have to crawl into. It's not. It's a tool, and it can be a strategic tool, and but you have to find the pricing structure that works for you. So what we wanted to do was play two sections of a video we use in business reinvention to kind of lay the groundwork for the discussion about structure of pricing. So the first section of the video we're going to play just talks about what, kind of the entry point of cost structuring is around it, or price structuring is around cost plus. So most of the time, if our businesses are doing any kind of retail or even food service, cost plus pricing is the go-to approach. And it makes sense, right? What's the cost of the food, the inputs, the products? What's my margin? And how does that just dictate the final cost to the customer? So we're going to talk about that cost plus pricing, and then we're going to look at another alternative that we'll jump off into other topics with. So Wyatt is in our control room, and he's going to play that short section around cost plus. And I think if you're listening and you own a small business, I think you'll identify with this simple, basic, but again, just recognize this is just a universal tool and formula that we're all looking at as business owners.
First, let's talk about cost plus pricing. Cost plus pricing is by far the easiest way to think about pricing your products. I'm mentioning it here first simply because it's popular, not because it's the best pricing strategy. Cost plus pricing is exactly what it sounds like, calculating the costs of your products and adding on a markup. For retailers, this markup is often double the wholesale price, but the markup percentage is variable depending on your business. While this strategy does preserve a nice profit margin, there are some issues because it doesn't take into account market factors like competition or demand for your product. So it can actually lead to a situation where you're charging too much or too little.
I would argue this is also, as simple as it is, it's very difficult. I think there's a lot of small businesses who don't really fully understand their costs. And sometimes the problem is they're not tracking, and sometimes the problem is they're not including everything. So they either have lost track of what their vendors are charging for things and realize later that they're off kilter on their pricing, or we'll say, well, that's the cost for the food, but what's the cost for the facility, the heat and lights, and all of that? And so getting that all documented and understood is a pretty significant challenge, as simple as it sounds.
And like it's imperative. Yeah. And that is a conversation that we have frequently too, is you've got to know your costs. And it's not, like you said, it's not just the cost of what the actual patty and the bun is, it's the cost of getting it out into the table in front of your customer. Yeah. And that entails a lot. And I think I've heard you say that before too. Well, sure, that's what it might cost, but what about when they factor in this part of their time or this part of their time or getting it to the store and then the shipping and it's like, yeah, there's a lot to that. So understanding that is a challenge for a lot of our businesses too.
And that makes me think of our business owners do not put a price or value on their time usually. So they're cooking in the kitchen, they're waiting the tables, they're behind the till at the retail store, and for whatever reason, that's failed to make it into the formula of costs, right? Because they think, well, I'm just me and it's my business, I can work endlessly, doesn't matter. But at some point, it will feel really good to you if in your formula you can represent yourself as a cost.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So it's not easy, but I guess the first step is really digging in and laying all those costs out and being honest and real and inclusive of everything to get to the place where, okay, here's the costs. Now the next part is what's my markup margin? What do I need above cost to be a business that makes money and serves customers and thrives in my community? And how did you guys think about that? What that percentage had to be?
Well, I think everywhere there's industry standard, right? For especially like in retail, there's industry standard. But when you're setting do you want like an actual number? Are you looking for an example? Are you looking for how do you?
You just have so much great experience here. Anything you can share that helps people see themselves in this?
Yeah. Well, so in setting up our pricing, so we knew we had a specific margin that we wanted to achieve on our items. And that margin actually might have varied depending on what the actual item was. If it was, textile, home decor, jewelry and whatnot. But we knew what we had to get out of our product. But we used, so there's costs. So it's understanding our costs of what it takes to get an item into your store, what the shipping is, the unpacking, the steaming, the prepping, the inputting, having staff that can help us merchandise it. It's a lot. And then also we did some market research too. So we wanted to be able to be at a price that was competitive, but if it was $5 less online, that didn't matter to us. We're not going to lower our price because that's an online store. Here we are in our community. We're part of our community. We're offering a service and a product to people, and that's okay. If you want to go online and buy it for $20 less, that's fine. You can do that. But this is what we need to get out of it, and this is where we're going to be pricing it at. So understanding, like, competitively pricing it in our market, but actually having that understanding that it's okay if we're a little bit above where our competitors might be online or in the market too, but not something that we've talked a lot with pricing is you have to be able to deliver and back it up.
Right.
So knowing that wherever we're pricing our product at, it's what it's worth.
Right.
It's the quality. It's a unique item. Maybe it took time to find it and to curate the collection that we have, but it's worth the price that's on it. We're not going to overprice or price gouge or, put a price on something that doesn't have the value.
Yeah, you made such a funny point there that struck me as I think small businesses, because it feels personal, it almost feels like an integrity issue. Like, am I being fair? Can I charge this much? I mean, does that make me a bad person to want to charge this versus this? And we're just what we're saying today is, like, let's just get all that off the table, because pricing is a business tool, a marketing tool, and we just need to think of it that way. So cost plus, the point we want you to really take away from that is know your costs. Yeah. We cannot get anywhere in any of the other models if you don't know what your costs are. All your costs. It
is so important. And to know your costs and to revisit your costs on the regular.
Yeah.
On a regular basis.
And we're going to talk about that with a little bit to do with the economy in the future. But let's move on. You made some good points in your story around holding prices higher and no matter what, which is really a great segue into value pricing. Yeah. Which is a second model we want to just talk about today. And in the video, we're going to put in the notes and post on this channel. This video includes, I don't remember if it's a dozen, it's 10 or 12 pricing models. So just know that there's many ways to do this. We're going to choose one more to talk about because that's where, from our experience with small businesses, the most potential is to build something that makes sense and that feels right to me. And I think we can both relate to it because we both used it too. So the second model is value-based pricing. And when you're listening, we're going to have Wyatt play this section as well. And when you're listening to it, if you own a small business, try to apply your own situation to what they're talking about and see where your head lands. Please post questions about that if you have some, and we've got some things we want to cover. So if you could play that, Wyatt.
Value-based pricing. Value-based pricing is when you set the price based on how much the customer perceives your product to be worth. This is done by locating data on what customers pay for comparable products, then listing what makes your product different and better. Then you need to place a financial value on those differentiating features. Lastly, you need to communicate that extra value your product provides to customers. Now, value-based pricing is one of the most ideal strategies for entrepreneurs. However, it only works if you have a differentiated product and you are genuinely providing more value than your customers pay in price. Value-based pricing, when done right, is a great way to build customer loyalty, but it demands you stay in lockstep with your customers' desires. Now let's talk about loss.
About that, but what were some of the things in that segment that stood out to you, Gina?
Well, I think this is like this, and like you said, for a lot of our businesses, this is where the challenge lies. So it's your cost, it's your margin, and it's your perceived value. And that the perceived value can help, once it's clearly defined and able to be communicated, it can help you better set your prices, but it also can help guide what you're selling as well. It feels good to define your perceived value and then to also offer items that reflect that, right? Or services that reflect that. It kind of holds you at a bar and you want to deliver, right? Like this is who we are and this is what we will deliver. And it kind of gives you like a guiding light to know what you're offering.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think any of you who've been through one of our programs knows that the why discussion is a starting point we use. And I get really excited about it because ultimately where that's taking us is to value proposition.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to figure out how does what you're here to do, what you care about, inform what becomes your value proposition as a business. And when we figure that out and we see things in the businesses and in the stories that helps us understand better what they're bringing to the table that nobody else can do, nobody else cares about, they're doing it better than anybody, we get pretty excited. And so what your example was, asking people to come up with their value proposition, we just went through this process, and as simple as it sounds, it's really hard to get clear on, to even understand it yourself, let alone communicate it to customers. And that's when you have to really dig in and do the work, and that lays the groundwork for this value pricing model, which is saying costs are important, gotta know those, you gotta get a certain markup to be in business, but then let's not stop there. Like, you're doing this for a reason. You love what you do. You love making incredibly delicious food for people that nobody else can make. What is that worth? They can't get that anywhere else. They can't get Lupita's. They can't get the coffee from Eminent Roasters anywhere else. So what's the value of that? And that's where it's fun. It's also challenging, but just know that it's the same place where we have all the fun.
Yeah.
Is getting excited about that and saying, what's possible here? What do we have to offer that nobody else can offer? And the simplest way to communicate that, which maybe doesn't capture really the essence of the conversation, but it's really easy to understand. And if Wyatt, you could pull up that graphic that I shared. It's so simple. But, you can buy a bottle of water at the truck stop for $1. You can go to a restaurant and pay $5. You can go to a music festival and pay $10. You can go to, somewhere else and pay $20. And probably you feel fine about paying those amounts in every one of those situations because it's understood that the value of that bottle of water in that particular situation or moment, it has more value when you're at a music festival and you're hot and, and there's nothing else to, so I think it's just it's giving you permission to say, no, it's not a fixed thing. There's whatever you bring to it is what sets the final price, not what the rest of the world has defined as the price. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. When you're showing that, you gave me an example or a thought of one of our businesses came into my mind. She's a professional photographer and she does work that is outstanding and creative and different, so outside the lines. And we had a conversation yesterday, and she's working to create photography experiences that are like truly reflective of like just everyday life. It's not a posed picture. It's bringing things from home. It's having kids doing the things that they love. And she was saying, she's like, it's really hard for me to figure out pricing on that because I'm only this old and I only do this and this is how I offer it. So it should probably be this amount. And so we had a great conversation about perceived value too. And why this is making her, she's doing something completely different than anybody else in her field. And that she doesn't need to look at other photographers that are her age doing things that she's doing, but what she needs to look at is what is she offering and what this really means for the person that's wanting to have an experience like this.
Right.
It's completely different.
Right.
So I think, and in her, that's what she was going to work on, was kind of defining what this experience really is and what makes it different. And then looking at what should her price be on it.
Right.
But like you're saying, you can get, what are you doing that's different than everybody else? What makes you different? And how do you define that?
Right. how do you get clear on it for yourself, and how do you communicate it to customers? Knowing that it has to also align with a pain point your customers have or something they want that they're looking for. Maybe they can't even articulate it, but it has to be aligned. You can't just force a value proposition on people. But if you know your customers, which I think one of the advantages of being a small business in a small community is people come to our programs, they know who they're there to serve. They can give you a name, they can tell you stories about their customers, they can say why they care. So you know them, and what we do in our reinvention is really dig in and say, let's dig in further. What are their pain points? What's some things going on in their life that help you dream a new value proposition for them, or help you get realigned with what they are looking for from you? And I just wanted to say one thing about the photographer too, because we've all been there. When I started Bread Star, I was 25. My daughter's age. You have to start somewhere, and you can know where you're trying to go with your value proposition, but there's also the case for you've got to get your feet on the ground and get some miles under you before you can really get clear on it. And so that's not wrong. That's not that she's maybe not she's doing it wrong. We're just trying to get her to see where she's headed.
Yes.
This is where you should look. To the horizon, and that's where you're going. You're not there, obviously, because you need to work this through more. You need to, just like we started doing these programs, we didn't charge for them because we were just figuring it out. But at the end of the day, just know that the value you're trying to hit and build for your customer is completely unique. And that's how you're gonna build your price.
Yeah, and that's interesting. We had that conversation too, because like you said, as a small business, you do have some flexibility.
Right.
So that was in there, like, as you grow and as you change, you can continue to grow and change.
Right.
And
you have to prove. There's a certain amount of proving you have to do. Customers want to know that you've delivered on this value proposition a lot of times successfully, and so that's part of it too, is getting some miles on your idea. So definitely there's that. It's difficult though, because especially for a business like retail or someone who's front facing to customers right out of the gates, trying to figure this out and be very public about pricing, because perceived value is playing a role there too. So if I had walked into Gina's clothing store, and for the first 6 months everything was $20 and $40, and then 12 months later everything was $200, and that would have been a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because I would have said to myself, well, gosh, a few months ago Gina thought these jeans were worth $20. Why does she think they're worth $120 now?
Right.
You had to go out there and know, yep, this is my price, and I'm confident about that, and I got to hold the line there and sell the value.
Absolutely, but also there's a lot of confidence in being able to do that when you know that the product is worth what you're selling it at.
Right.
So.
Yep. Any questions coming in about this? It's a tricky.
I think we're okay right now.
It's a tricky subject because when we talk about this stuff in our workshops, there's two sides to it. One feels really bad and one feels really good. And sometimes what it feels like when we talk about this is like we're calling people out. I think they can somehow feel like picked on, or just because we're saying you're not charging enough, or why are you doing it that way? Because what we're trying to get them to see is there's so much more happening there than you're representing in the pricing model you're using. And that's sending a message to your customers that's different than what you want them to understand about you, which leads us to, the idea that price is a story.
Right.
And that's a Seth thing. Before we talk about the story part, which is where I want to dig in a little more too, should we play? There's a little clip around, we have a video we've used in Reinvention. Maybe you can share who this person is, and in the segment we're going to...
Sure. So this is the video we're going to be showing you is Jamie Trull, and she She is a young lady who is focused on small businesses as well. She does a lot around the financial world of small business ownership, and she's been published in different articles with Forbes. She has a YouTube channel. She's got Instagram. She's got her own program as well. But her YouTube channel is great. She has a lot of videos that are fantastic resources. I'll include the video in our Facebook page so you guys can see it and you can check out what else she has. But she has a gift in being able to communicate some, I think, in sometimes confusing, messy finance strategy world where our brains don't always want to go. She has a gift in communicating it very clearly and effectively. So we picked out this little portion of the video. It's a longer video that talks about inflation and pricing. And this little piece is something that I think has stood out to a lot of our businesses when we show it.
Yeah, we're giving you a pep talk here. She's giving you a pep talk, saying it in ways we can't fully capture. So take it in that vein that it's a pep talk around how to navigate these really chaotic economic times where supply chain stuff, everything is sort of out of whack and we don't know how to deal with that. This is your pep talk.
There you go.
My fifth tip, and arguably the most important for business owners to remember, is to resist the urge to be a martyr. Now, some of you have been arguing with me when I talk about price increases and passing on some of these price increases to your customer base because perhaps you want to be able to help your customers through difficult times. And sometimes it absolutely makes sense to accept smaller profit margins in order to help the people we serve through difficult times. I absolutely understand that to be the case. This was something that happened in the pandemic. A lot of people did put off these price increases because other people were having a difficult time and they did not want to add fuel to the fire in the midst of that. However, we don't need to be a martyr. It is misplaced if we think that we're just going to, have to deal with everybody else's price increases, but we are not going to do it ourselves. When that happens, our profit margins shrink oftentimes to the point that our business is no longer viable. And if your business goes out of business, how are you going to be able to serve those people that need you? It is your duty as a small business owner to actually be able to run a business that is profitable, that is sustainable, right? Profit equals sustainable. You're not going to continue in business if you aren't making any money. That's the purpose of business in large part, is to help people, but also to make money so that you can run your business. So that is super important to me that we talk about this, because I think that sometimes we feel bad. We feel bad when our prices are increasing, passing that on in any way to our consumers. And I'm not suggesting that we do this in an irresponsible way. I definitely don't suggest that we exploit this. I think that there are people that do that. So let's kind of set that apart. But I'm talking about maintaining profit margins that are sustainable and making profit that helps to feed your family, that helps you to be able to give back to your community, that helps you to be able to employ people within your business to feed their families, right? That's what the economy is based off of. And if small businesses don't step up to the plate and make sure that they are running sustainable businesses, then they are going to not make it. And that is the fabric of the communities in which we live. A quick example of this is maybe you do weekly services and you're thinking about increasing your prices by $5 a week per customer. And maybe that's a 5% increase to keep up with inflation, right? Maybe you charge $100 and you're going to charge $105 a week. To the customer, that's $20 a month, right? That's $20 a month, $5 a week. To you, if you have, let's say, 100 customers, right? Let me make sure I'm doing the math right. That's about $2,000 in extra revenue for you in the month. So what costs your customer $20 probably isn't going to be, injuring them in any specific way. It's not going to cause a significant impact to them, but it will cause a significant impact to your business when you add that up and add those customers together, and the impact of that, and being able to then employ people, pay them fair wages, right? To be able to pay yourself fair wages, all of those things. Avoid being a martyr, make smart decisions, look for places that you can cut costs like we talked about, but don't be afraid to raise your prices if and when you need to. Because otherwise, if we do continue into a period of inflation, it's the businesses that don't adapt that are not going to be around, right, after the fact. So we can see that in the history where we've had periods of rising inflation that has lasted. And I guarantee you there were plenty of businesses that did not stick around during that time period because they didn't adapt. They waited far too long. So don't be the martyr. Do what you need to do to have a strong and healthy business, and continue to watch this channel. I would love if you got value out of this, or if you just want to celebrate the fact that I was in. I would love if you got value out of
Good.
this, or if you just want to celebrate the
Turn
fact
your
that
volume. There you
All
go.
right.
Should we just take a moment to let
Yes.
that sink in?
Yes.
Don't we all need to hear that?
Yes.
It just doesn't matter how big or small your business is.
Yes. I mean,
So what happens there? She said some things that made me think. So the idea of helping people is always somewhere in the story of our business owners.
right.
And that's something we really love, something that we've realized is a thread that runs through our community of entrepreneurs and small businesses. But because that's how they're coming to their businesses, that's where it can also hurt them in the pricing. And she was saying, you know, we're trying to help our customers. We're trying to make sure they can still get breakfast at a reasonable cost and feed their families, whatever. So we take it, I'm saying we hypothetically, but taking it upon ourselves to continue to make it affordable so that your customers can get through a hard economic time, for example. That's just sort of a loose example.
It's a good example, though.
And she's basically encouraging you to kind of let go of that role that you're trying to play in saving your customers from the economy, because you can't, number
Right.
one. And it's a disservice to do that at the expense of being in business next year.
Yeah, I thought her line of saying it is your duty to run a business that is sustainable.
Right.
You're not doing anybody any favors if you're not going to be around in a year from now.
Right.
You've got employees, you're part of a community.
Right.
Like it's a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope everyone got a little, I don't know, motivated from that talk. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's where I say it. There's two sides to this conversation, because she's basically calling us all out as martyrs. But am I right? She's right. Like,
She's right.
There's a certain martyrness to the idea that we are locked into certain prices, right?
Right. But I mean, I think that's what makes her so great, but because she explains it so well. Like, yes, it's your duty to run a business that is sustainable and to have pricing that is going to be making you money so you can afford to operate your business, to pay your team. But also she puts in there too, like, I'm not saying to exploit the fact of it.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying to go crazy and exploit your customers, but to really, again, know your numbers,
Yep.
know your value, know where you got to charge and charge it.
Yeah, and you're just making me think too, part of being healthy as a business is being able to employ and pay people well, which is what all of our businesses want to be able to do.
Right.
And so often that's a challenge because they feel like they don't have the budget for the wages. They just don't have the financial resources to pay enough to get the right people, all of that. That is all entangled with pricing, right? They're never going to get there unless they can readjust and reassess how they're bringing price to the table and how they're using price as a tool to make their business healthy. So, yeah. All right. So, value proposition and pricing as a story. I think this is where it gets good, right? Because this is where creativity comes in, passion comes in, the unique ability of a small business to do things differently and quickly and adjust and try things. This is where it gets good. But let's start with value proposition. So what is it and why is it so hard for businesses to pinpoint for themselves?
Well, I think a lot of times when you're working in your business, you're doing the day-to-day things, and that becomes kind of what you start to focus on. And it's hard to take a step back sometimes and to really look at the passion and the why and what makes you different. And I think that's where your programs are so valuable, because it forces people to do that, to step out, to look at their business and get reconnected to why they started in the first place and why it is different than everybody else's.
Right. I had two stories I was going to tell, and I think they fall on both sides of the conversation around price and value proposition. So I'll share one. when we were just getting started with Red Star, going into it, bright and shiny, that we're going to be creative, we're going to have this great agency. At the time, this was a long time ago, agencies ran a certain way. They were very traditional. They had a model that we were following, and think of Mad Men and the whole idea of markups and commissions and hourly rates, things like that. We were doing all of that. And we wanted all of the good stuff that went with it, which was like the reputation for having fun at work and being fun people and being creative and all those things. We wanted all of that. But it was hard, and we were not confident. And so there was a point in the process of trying to get started where I had seen somewhere, and this was, like I said, a while ago, desktop publishing was the thing. We were in a space in marketing where it started to feel like, well, maybe people don't need ad agencies anymore because everyone can do their own newsletters now and some of that. But there was this model that I heard about, and it was called the ad store. And it was a model where I saw they had set up basically like a menu for advertising agencies. So what I was not confident about was going out and talking to businesses and saying that I am an ad agency, and it works like this. I'm creative. I don't know how much it's going to cost you, but I'll tell you later. But it'll be worth it, and try my crazy idea, all of that. And it was very uncomfortable. People were skeptical. They didn't know how it works. So it was hard. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that means I shouldn't do it that way. Maybe they want predictability, and they want low costs, and they want easy. So I'm like, well, there's this ad store idea. And they just have like this menu, and it says flyer, $145, logo, $500, newsletter, whatever, $600. I thought, brilliant. How brilliant is that? It's so easy then. I can just put a menu in front of a client. There's no uncomfortable conversations.
Pick what you want.
They understand. I don't have to explain how it works. They just pick what they want, and then we do it, and it's done. And so I thought I was really excited about this, because what it did is alleviate all of the discomfort I was feeling and it kind of was pressing the easy button for me.
Right.
But I think everyone listening to the story can understand and see right away that was obviously not the right approach, because that absolutely was the opposite of everything I wanted from my business. It was the opposite of the reason I started the business, is to have this kind of relationship with clients. So it was a pricing model. It was a way of pricing my business, my services. But in order to use it, could it have been successful? Yes, it could have been, if I had re-engineered the entire agency to support that pricing model. It absolutely could have worked. I could have had a different type of staff. I could have had a different type of quoting system, all kinds of things. And that would have delivered a different value proposition. So the value proposition, had I gone to that pricing model, would have been cheap, easy, fast.
Right.
And is there a place for that in the market? Yes, there is. That's not wrong. Mm-hmm. But it's not what I wanted. And it's a different value proposition. The value proposition I wanted and felt deeply about was, the idea of creativity, the idea of doing something, problem solving, great design. So those two just didn't go together. And so I thought it was a good example of a really clear-cut pricing model, value proposition. They're not working. One is not serving the other. And we see some of those kinds of things happening.
Absolutely. That's a great example of looking at, that pricing model and strategy, your value proposition. Are they working together?
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes what we see is they'll come to us and say, well, this is my pricing model. And it's not negotiable in theory. Well, if that's the pricing model, then this is the story we can tell.
Yeah.
We cannot tell the story you want to tell because it doesn't support the pricing model. If this is the pricing model, this is the story. If you're willing to consider a different pricing model, we can tell a different story. And that can change everything. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. It's not straight. It's not a straight path, but there's got to be a good relationship between the two, right?
Right.
So I don't know if anyone's ever felt that kind of pain.
That was a really good example. And also it's a good example. It's not a straight path.
No. I would argue I had to try that
to
know and learn. And we're all learning.
Right.
Just because I do marketing doesn't mean I know necessarily any more of this stuff than you do until I live it and learn and feel the pain and agony of it. Another example I had was, about 8 years ago. It's on the other end of the spectrum. So, and it's around value proposition and understanding my value proposition. So, like I said, we're an agency. We do just what you'd expect. We build websites, we take photos, we build ads, we do all of that. You know what we do, but is our value proposition tied to websites and ads? And no, I would say. And understanding that about the agency has been for me a learning process because it's a constantly evolving. So about 8 years ago or 7 years ago or so, and we have, like I've said before, we have a group of core clients. We only have a few. We've worked with them for a very long time. It's a formula that's working really well for us. It helps us enjoy our work and love our work. But again, just trying to say, okay, what's our value proposition and how do I help communicate that? Well, I got a call from a really large the president of a really large company. And, our biggest client, maybe they have 500 employees. This company has 5,000 employees, a lot of employees. And he said, hey, I just took over the company. Our culture's not working. Can you come and help me fix it? Which was cool, right? I go, wow, this is cool. What a totally out of left field, didn't see it coming. And I got off the phone and I thought, that's really cool, but why did he call me? Why me? Why did he call me? Do I fix cultures? Like, is that what I do? I don't know. I thought I did ads and websites. But it made me realize, no, my value proposition is not doing a website and an ad. If he needed a website or an ad, he could have called 20 other people. He needed this thing that he figured out I do for people, which I'm not even sure I knew I did for people. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I'm learning myself, but it was a good point in our evolution where I went, oh, okay, this is what we do. And it feels really good. And I'm not saying I didn't know it. I'm just saying as the agencies evolved, we kind of grow into our value proposition more and more. So it was just again, another demonstration how we're all learning. None of us can see our own businesses from a totally outside perspective.
It's hard.
And you're just kind of keeping your mind open and paying attention. So that was my example.
That's a great example too.
Both ends of the spectrum. But that gave me a lot of confidence, obviously. I mean, getting the understanding that helping companies build culture is a very different way of approaching the work we do.
Right.
And understanding that and bringing that story to the team and that story to our clients changed the way we work, changed the way we approach the problems we're solving. It changed the way we approach our clients in the work we're wanting to do for them and the story we're telling about why are we wanting to do this for you. It's not about that video. It's not about that ad. It's about the cumulative effect of, you know what I mean, on and on. But
yeah, and I think that's an interesting point too, that sometimes when we start to understand our value and our value proposition and what makes us different, I mean, your customers can lean into that too, and that feels good.
Yeah.
And then you get even more confident in what you're doing. And you're taking your customers with you on that journey.
Yeah.
And they appreciate that as well. Like they know why you're great, but it really helps them when you can clearly define and communicate it.
Yes.
It helps them grasp it a little bit better too. Yes. You're bringing them along on the ride.
I love that. I love the idea of you're bringing them along. Because you wouldn't be there without them, right?
Right.
I mean, they're the reason you exist, and it's sort of just a total two-way street the whole way.
Yes.
30 years in, we're still on a two-way street here, and it's an evolution. But that's probably why small business owners and entrepreneurs are wired the way they are, because they like that journey.
Right.
They're looking for that. So.
Right.
So the value pricing strategy. How do you see that when we start talking about customer experience? To me, this is also one of the front doors to this whole discussion around how do you apply value pricing? How do you support value pricing in your business? And how do you see the connection between those things?
Well, we've talked about this. So with value pricing, you have to deliver. So it's the product that you're selling, that you're confident in it, that it is the best that you can provide or offer if that's the direction that you're going in, but also that you're creating a customer experience that delivers on that value proposition as well. So we've talked about that before, that if you want to be, well, just knowing that what you're doing, whatever you're selling, in the space that you're selling it in the way that you're communicating it, that it's meeting your customer experience and expectations and that value proposition.
Yep. Yes. And when you can layer onto this incredible product you're selling an experience they can't get anywhere else, that's where you can really, you can capture value in your pricing model.
Right.
And getting confident about that is hard.
And it's a lot of work.
It is. And we almost have to point out to our businesses, you realize no one can go anywhere else and get Maria's food. Let's put a value on that.
Yeah.
All the stories you tell us about the ingredients and the recipes and the care and attention to detail, they can't get that at Taco Bell. They can't get that at the convenience store. What is that worth? I guess that's the question. What is it worth to get hitting coaching from someone from the major leagues? What is that worth? It's worth a lot. But getting confident enough to dial that in and actually put value on it is really important.
Important, difficult, and I think it does feel a little bit scary because, like you're saying, you're putting yourself out there a bit.
Yes, that's very true. Putting yourself out there.
Yeah, but I think, in that TED Talk I listened to this morning, it's a mixture of putting yourself out there, but when you have a really clearly defined value proposition, you can really put that out there too and stand behind it.
Mm-hmm. And this is where small businesses have the advantage, I would argue. If you want to look at it that way, you guys are in the best possible position to flex through all of these changes in the economy and go on that winding road and win, because you can change things on a dime. You can get creative about what happens when they walk in my door. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen that they can't experience anywhere else. And it can be the littlest things that make the difference. And you can do that. In fact, we want you to do that. Your customers want you to do that. I'm thinking of our current business who has a brewery. Like, we just look at him like the uniqueness of you is limitless. Like, your customers see it. We want more of that uniqueness, whatever that means. If it's beer, if it's lawn bowling, if it's whatever.
Music, anything.
Bring it. We're here for that. We're here for the beer, but we're here really for that. And when we can get our businesses to see that, it changes how they think, I think, a little bit. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, it changes how they think, but also, and that it goes back to the whole, it helps them fall back in love with their business, because that's the fun part.
Yes.
It's not just about selling beer or jeans or tacos.
Right.
It's so much more than that.
It is. So what made you, so you were good at, the reason I love to ask you these questions is because you're just a perfect role model for this pricing.
Right.
And we don't need to know the messy behind the scenes.
There's not a perfect role model, but yeah.
But I mean, I've said this before, to be able to bring a high-end women's retail clothing store into a town of 1,000, whatever, in rural Minnesota and do it successfely.
When you say it that way, it sounds crazy.
It does. It was. But you did it, and
it's funny.
And you were successful. That's no small fact. So when in that whole process did you feel like we've got it right? we've found our pocket here, and pricing's right. The customer experience is on point. We're in the right lane here.
Yeah, well, it took time. I mean, when we started the store, we knew that we wanted to have a store that was different. We knew that we wanted something that was high quality, that was unique, and that was accessible to people, women in rural Minnesota, because, at that time it wasn't easy to find. And we didn't believe in disposable fashion. Like, I want to save up my money. I want to buy something beautiful, and I want it to last me for years. And I want to wear it, and I want to love it. So I'm going to invest in it. And that also has that value. If I'm going to invest my money in it, I want to love it. And that was always what we wanted customers to feel good about what they get. We want them to love the items that they get from our store and love them for years, right? And when we first opened, there was a process in that, and sharing that and educating our customers. And my business partner, her husband, said to us when we started down this journey, that's fine, but never apologize for your pricing. Make sure you have a product that stands up to what you're pricing it and to what you're offering, and you can never apologize for it. Because if you start saying, yeah, but it's this, and well, but online or over here it's this way, and we stuck really true to that because we knew what we had. We knew that it was of the quality. We knew that we were curating this experience, and we never exploited, the pricing on our product or anything like that. But also it was an educational process, because for a lot of our customers, this was the first time that they had ever tried on a $180 pair of jeans. And so the education process around what our product actually was took some time. And I think as time went on and people kind of got used to it, and also there was like a proven track record that, oh yeah, I've owned this for 7 years. I've owned this for 8 years, and this is still in the best shape. These are my favorite leggings, and I've had them for 3 seasons. I can't believe it. So it kind of started easing the surprise of the price point maybe, and people started understanding it. But up until, it's still going, and I'm sure they still have that coming in through the door, like, what? Who would pay this for leggings? Sort of comment. And our reaction was, oh, you don't have to. Right. That doesn't have to be a legging that goes home with you. This is why it's priced where it's at. It's beautiful. You can try it on, see what you think, come back, but you don't have to buy the legging.
Right. In other words, oh, I didn't build this business for you, but thanks for stopping by.
Right.
Yeah. And of course you had to know that there's enough people that want that story. In your community, and you drew them from all over, of course. And that's another struggle that our customers or our businesses have, is often it requires them to draw from outside their small town.
Yes.
And so I would argue that's even a stronger argument for value pricing, which is a story, which is a customer experience. You need it anyway, and more so even if you're trying to pull people from farther away to come eat at your restaurant. But again, that's where the opportunity is.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that's your value proposition where you want to go, stand firm in it.
Yeah.
Don't waver, because once you do, then it gets confusing to your customer too.
Right.
They want to be on board with what you're offering, and they want to buy into that value proposition just as much as you are. Be true to it, be honest with it, deliver on it, and try not to waver on it. Because if we would have, like you said, if we would have started carrying $28 jeans next to our other jeans, that gets a little bit confusing.
Yes.
But I thought you guys were about this.
Yes.
This doesn't seem to be following that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. My friend Seth says some things about pricing. Price is a story. It's a story you're telling your customers, but it's trying to align with the story they're telling themselves. And they have a story about your product or service from their perspective, and you're just trying to match it up. And he has a quote out of one of his videos we watched that says, sometimes people want to pay more because it fits the story they have in their head. So what I mean by that, they don't want to pay more for nothing. They want to go to Happy Soul and buy $180 jeans because they want the story they're telling themselves, and the story you're telling them is what they're looking for. It's not necessarily about the jeans, and that's not to diminish the value of the jeans or anything, but recognizing that pricing is a story. And so if you think about your pricing and try to look at it like, okay, well, here's my price. What story does that tell my customers? What story can I support that price with that does justice to what I'm selling? It might change the way it might help you get comfortable. It might change the way you think about it.
Absolutely. It's a great point.
How are we doing?
Great.
I mean, like, we could just ramble on and
How are
on.
you doing? Yeah, I think that we're at kind of a wrap up point here. Oh yeah, we're at an hour. It is wrap up time.
It's wrap up time.
We got 3 minutes.
Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Last call.
That's what we need, a light. We need a light in here. Well, I think that this was a great conversation. Obviously, pricing is not easy. Even in our conversation, it wasn't a straight line. We kind of we worked our way through it. Knowing your costs, knowing your margin, knowing your pricing strategy, knowing your value proposition, being able to communicate that with your customers, and delivering an experience that a product and experience that is true to your value and your value proposition.
Right. Yeah. If you want to work on it, Google value proposition, dig into some really some case studies and examples of other marketing strategies around value proposition and how they're communicated. There's a lot of great examples out there that'll help you kind of see into that a little deeper. Again, another tool. These are all tools. These are just levers to pull to build the business that you want around, the passion you have.
Right. And I'll post the links to all of our videos that we used today. And if there's something that you wanted people to take away from a pricing conversation, what would it be? If you I'm going to go with it's your duty to run a business that is sustainable. I like that one from Jamie.
I would say pricing is a story. It's not a box that someone put you in. It's not dictated by all the things you think you're being held hostage by. And if you can reframe the idea of price in your business as a tool, marketing tool, I think it can help you rethink how it contributes to your success.
I think that's great. It's so valuable. Put it to work, people.
Yep.
All right. Well, you guys, thank you for joining us for our roundtable. We have our first Thursday of the month in April. We'll be doing another roundtable, and I believe that roundtable will be featuring some young entrepreneurs making their way in the business communities. So stay tuned to our alumni page for updates and posts, and we hope that you guys can join us again soon.
All right. Thank you.